My theme today is to talk about relationships. There's a heck of a lot of things that goes into being successful. Some of that's luck, some of it's having the right product, some of it's having the right timing, some of it's all the things that Rachel just said. But I really want to pick up, in fact, on a big part of what Rachel talked about, which is relationships. My first attempt at being part of a startup was approximately 1986. I've been trying to work it out, but it was about then. And I was one of a team of 4 people who put in a little bit of money into a company in Christchurch around an entrepreneur. The entrepreneur had quite a good idea. He had a prototype, and we had potential customers. All we had to do is deliver the product in thousands to these people. So we invested the best part of $100,000, which was a lot of money then, in making a machine to make the product. And the problem was the machine didn't work. And the entrepreneur became obsessed with this blasted machine. You know, he would work 24 hours trying to make the thing work so that we could deliver the first order. And it was apparent after about a month that this machine just was no good. What we should have learned was that that approach wasn't going to work in terms of making the product. We had to sit back and try again. The 3 investors were quite happy to do that. The entrepreneur only thought, I can't spend any more money, I've just got to make this machine work. And after another month of that, we all walked away and the thing died. And it died for a number of reasons, but in my mind, the main reason it died was our relationships failed. And many startups, many businesses die, not because they're a bad idea, not because it's a bad product, but because the people fall apart. So to me, the theme that I would like to help you remember is the important, absolute fundamental importance of the relationships you have with both your business partners and everybody else around you. So a little bit about I'm Able. In 1993, I helped employ a person called Sunil Vatha. He came to New Zealand from South Africa, and over the ensuing years, he and I became pretty good mates. And we did all that in a workplace. So our friendship wasn't a social one, it was a business one. About 2001, my father died of stroke, and what struck me about his death was that it was a pretty hopeless one, that he had a series of strokes, and every time he had a stroke, he'd start to recover, and then he'd have another one. But the medical system didn't really give him anything to help him help himself. He felt pretty hopeless. There was absolutely nothing he could do. So when 3 years ago, IRL told Sunil and myself that they had potential technology for helping people with stroke recover, I was pretty enthusiastic. I sort of felt I had that passion already because it had affected me. Sunil and I then set about licensing that technology from IRL, and we set up the company. Now, the company is a classic startup, 1 full-time person, about 8 people who put in bits and bobs. We've all put in money, we've all put in time for nothing. So at the moment, we're all working off our own nickel, and we've got as far now as having raised amongst ourselves about $500,000. We've got our first product, it works, we've got our first customers. We've now got our regulatory approval for Europe, and we're really going through the next step, which is raising money to be able to effectively take this product out to the world, because the problem is going to be a distribution one. We've got our first 2 distributors in New Zealand and Australia, but going to Europe and to North America is going to be a big task. There were 2 things that have stood out in my mind so far. The first is this experience is a bit like a roller coaster. It goes up and it goes down. You have days where you think everything's working and this is brilliant, and you have other days where it just sucks, right? And you get through it. I get through it because of 2 people, really. Firstly, Sunil and I are really complementary, and when I have my downers, he has his uppers. And he helps me through it and I help him through it. That relationship survives everything, and we learnt that before I'm Able. The second thing is my wife. She tolerates all this, and she learns to listen and be part of it. And she's a, shall we say, a passive part of the company, but she's a really important part of it. And it's another little theme that I've noticed. So many people who start companies end up with split marriages. And in my mind, if I had to start a company and I lost my marriage, I'd rather not start the company. It's just such a fundamental thing, is to have those secure relationships gives you the confidence to go ahead, and it's too easy to forget those things. So my plea to you is remember the people around you. Your networks and your relationships will be fundamental to you in many, many ways. Firstly, the first lot of money you're going to get if you're not going to fund it all yourself is going to be from friends, families and fools, all right? And we've raised quite a lot of money that way, and I'd like to think none of them are fools, all right? They are people who know us and who trust us and who have a good relationship with us, and I hope that we won't let them down. We've had a lot of help and guidance on the way. Perhaps the best advice that I've had so far was from a person I knew in Formway. We were playing around with our stroke rehab device, and I forgot to mention what it is. It's a device that you use with virtual reality that helps a person move their affected arm while they're playing a game which activates the brain. And effectively, to recover from stroke, you really need to do both. You have to have an active brain going to redevelop the networks, which is what's the problem. What he said to us is we cannot know our customer enough. He said we have to know them so well that we know better than they do what it is they really want. And he used the word want, not need. And with the stroke rehab, we spent hours and hours and hours sitting down with stroke patients, watching them try to use our virtual reality and our product. And the first thing that we learnt with our first product was that it was too hard. Even though we had simplified it to the point where we thought it was boring, it was too hard for them to do. There was too much information, they couldn't handle it. So we gradually reduced the content of our tasks for them down to the point where the simplest is extraordinarily simple. And the virtual reality task they use mostly is the simplest. And I don't think we would have got there if we hadn't spent hours and hours with those patients. And I can thank that guy in Formway for that, because I don't think I'd have done it if it hadn't been for him. In terms of raising money, when you want to go the next step, I think, again, it's a relationship thing. You've got to form a relationship with one or more investors, and you've got to sustain that relationship. And that means really that you have to think that everything you're doing is not only meeting the needs of your customers, but it's going to meet the needs of your investors. If your investors are happy with you, they'll look after you when you need it. I think that's a really important rule. It's quite easy for investors to come and say, well, we think you should do this and you should do this, and maybe you've got to do that, and you feel a bit pulled and pushed. So you've got to work your way through that. It's a relationship thing. And if you don't, it won't work. Sunil and I are going through this fundraising business right now for the next round. We're looking to raise a bit over $1 million. We've got our lead investor, we've got 2 or 3 subordinate investors, and we've got a pile of angels who are bulking this together. We're extremely lucky to have one lead investor who's helping pull this together, and I think we've developed a really good relationship with her, and she has drilled down through everything we did. And to some extent, some of the things that we thought we got right, we didn't get right. But I'd like to think that we've listened to her and responded and fixed things. And that what we will have is a champion who will work with us in the future. So if you haven't heard my message now, it's relationships. Just remember the people around you who love you and who you love are going to be your support when things don't work, and sometimes that'll happen, and they're going to pick you up and help you make the next step and succeed as well. Thank you.